This is the perfect place for a Koranic review. I have quoted passages from 90 of the Quran's 114 surahs. Half of those have been reviewed in their entirety, including every surah handed down during the first 5 years. The score of Meccan surahs I passed over can be summarized as follows. The Mohammedized stories of Adam, Noah, Abraham, Lot, Moses, Pharaoh, Jesus, and Mary are collectively retold 100 times. Jonah, Joshua, Jacob, Joseph, and Job are added to the mix with a surah named in Jonah's honor. Another is dedicated entirely to Joseph. The Jewish kings, Saul, David, and Solomon, are shown cavorting with devils in stories shamelessly plagiarized from the Talmud, Jewish myths and folklore. The crude recastings suit Muhammad's agenda, and they are as transparent as they are obnoxious. But this pales in comparison to the never-ending argument and the dreadful tales of pain and punishment. Religious thought apart from that stolen from Moses, Qusay, and Zayed is sparse. Now that we've closed the book on Mecca, how do you suppose our bastion of prophetic piety responded to the demise of his wife and uncle, his benefactor and his protector? Before the body of his 70-year-old wife Khadijah was cold, the 50-year-old prophet married Aisha, a 6-year-old child. Pedophilia notwithstanding, the aging religious leader tried polygamy next. He married Sada, an immigrant from Abyssinia, on his way out of town. His behavior towards Abu Talib was equally callous.
Ishaq. Abu Jahl, with sundry other notables, went to Talib and said, "We acknowledge your rank, but now that you are near death, we are deeply concerned. You know the trouble that exists between us and your nephew, so call him and let us make an agreement that he will leave us alone and we will leave him alone." The messenger arrived, and Abu said, "Nephew, these noble men have come to give you something and gain something in return." Muhammad said, "Can you give me words by which you can rule the Arabs and subject the Persians to you?" "How about 10 words?" Abu Jahl said,
knowing the drill.
Muhammad replied, "You must say, 'There is no ilah but Allah,' and Muhammad is his messenger." They clapped their hands and said, "Do you want us to make all the ilahs into one ilah, Muhammad? That would be an extraordinary thing."
Muhammad's Islam was about money and power, to be sure, but what was the fate of those who helped him along the way?
Ishaq. If you say those words, Uncle Abu, then I shall be able to intercede for you on Resurrection Day. Abu Talib didn't, and died. His brother Abbas claimed that on his deathbed he moved his lips, so Abbas came running to Muhammad and said, "Nephew, my brother has spoken the words you gave him to say." The apostle replied, "I didn't hear them." Bukhari. A Muslim said to the Prophet, "You were not of any help to your uncle Abu, even though he used to protect you." The Prophet said, "He is in a shallow fire, and had it not been for me, he would have been in the bottom of hell fire."
In contrast to the depraved behavior of the Muslim prophet, a notable pagan performed admirably. Remember Uncle Lahab? Upon hearing of Khadijah's and Talib's death, he went to the Kaaba and proclaimed,
"Muhammad has suffered a great loss. Attack him no longer."
Unimpressed, Muhammad was ready to move on. When last we saw him, he had dressed his son up in his pajamas and was sprinkling magic dust on his enemies' heads.
Tabari. Some assert that Bakr came to Ali and asked him about the Prophet. He told him that he had gone to the cave of Thawr in the darkness of night. The Prophet heard Bakr coming and thought he was one of the polytheists. He increased his pace and his sandal strap snapped. He skinned his big toe on a stone. It bled profusely. Bakr was afraid that he would scare Muhammad, so he spoke to him before they reached the cave at dawn and went inside.
Meanwhile, back in Mecca, the locals
scolded Ali and beat him,
proving that Allah was powerless and Muhammad wasn't a prophet.
They took him to the mosque and imprisoned him for a while. About this, Allah revealed, And when the unbelievers plot against you to kill you or drive you out, they plot, but Allah plots too, and Allah is the best plotter.
The Arabic word for plotter could just as easily have been translated schemer. The scheming prophet had found the perfect God. The next hadith says that Bakr and Muhammad set off together rather than separately. And while that's a contradiction, it's not the most disturbing part of the tradition. We learn that Bakr's son, born like his sister Aisha, years after Allah anointed his messenger, was named Abd al-Rahman. Aisha recalls the prophet's paranoia.
Ishaq. Muhammad never failed to come by our house every day at the two ends of the day. Once he came during the heat of the day, so we knew that it was because of something special. When he came in, Dad rose from his bed, and the messenger sat down. Muhammad said, "Send out those who are with you." My father said, "Prophet, these are my daughters."
One of which is now your wife.
"They can do you no harm. May my father and mother be your ransom." Tabari. According to what I have been told, the messenger is said to have informed Ali that he was leaving and to have commanded him to stay behind to hand back those things which people had entrusted to his custody. Everyone in Mecca who had any possessions would deposit it with Muhammad because they knew of his honesty.
Oh, sure. That squares nicely with the demon-possessed, lying sorcerer theme complained about incessantly in the Quran, don't you think?
Ishaq. When the messenger decided upon departure, he went to Bakr, and the two of them left by a window in the back of Abu's house, and went to the cave of Thawr, in the mountain below Mecca.
This time there was no plot, no multinational alliance, no swordsman lurking outside Muhammad's house, no warning from Gabriel, no pajamas or Ali in bed, no fairy dust, no blind men, no stubbed toe, and no scripture handed down commemorating the Great Escape. As such, it seems that Islam is the only religion in which no one, from God to prophet, can tell the truth. And that's because the prophet's Lord became his ambition. His paradise reflected his fantasies. His hell was a manifestation of the revenge he craved, a payment for the torment he had endured as a child. This was all a nasty charade. Somewhere in this mound of manure, in this transparent plagiarism, mindless repetition, odious schemes, obnoxious arguments, and demented threats, I had hoped to find a glimmer of original inspiration so that I could provide some semblance of balance. But there is none. Islam as a religion perished in the blazing heat and driving sands of Mecca, only to rise from the ashes as a political doctrine in Yathrib. The ritualistic trappings that survived the desert crossing were simply used to manipulate future subjects. It was only 250 miles, but most everything changed. Ar-Rahman became an attribute, and Allah became God. And what a God he was! One who was ever ready to condone whatever suited his prophet's personal agenda: fighting, assassination, genocide, rape, incest, polygamy, lying, racism, and thievery. The war of words turned violent. The Meccans were robbed and plundered. But that was child's play compared to the fate of the Jews. They went from allies to enemy faster than you can say, massacre them. While the score following 12 years of wrangling in Mecca ended Islam 50, pagans 4,950. The game wasn't over, not by a long shot. In fact, the battle was just beginning. Tabari, Volume 6, page 157 says, under the banner,
Institution of the Islamic Era. It is said that when Allah's messenger came to Medina,
this would be September 622 A.D.,
he ordered the establishment of a new era. They used to reckon time by the number of months after Muhammad's arrival.
As with all things Islam, the statement attributed to Muhammad wasn't true, but it demonstrated a crucial mindset. It was actually Umar, the second caliph, who ordered the institution of the Islamic calendar. He established Muhammad's Hijra, or migration to Medina, as the first year of the Islamic era. From the Muslim perspective, it was no longer 622 A.D., or 622 years after the birth of Christ, but AH1. They were commemorating the year Islam was born. They knew what you now know. The religion of Islam died in Mecca. A tyrannical and violent political doctrine took its place. The first Mecca Surah abrogated most everything that had been proclaimed during Islam's fated religious period. This was a new day, Resurrection Day, the beginning of political Islam, the doctrine of submission. Some things didn't change, however. Muhammad's character remained the same, as did his charade of using godly pronouncements to defend his claims. But his behavior did change. So did his commandments. Circumstances enabled the failed prophet to act more belligerently. While the Meccans gained enemies, the Hanifs joined an ever-growing list of condemned, one that would soon include the members of rival religions, Christians and Jews.